It was almost 20 years ago when childcare worker Kathryn Grosvenor left her house to buy a packet of cigarettes.
Canberra police are searching for a 23-year-old woman who disappeared from her Gungahlin home 4 days ago.
We do love you, and we really want you back.
6 days later, her naked body was found floating in a nearby lake. The 23-year-old, affectionately known as Kat, had been stabbed more than 60 times, her body weighed down by a concrete bollard. A murder so savage it still haunts the people of Canberra. To this day, her murder remains unsolved, and her family and the people who loved her most remain tortured by what happened to their beautiful cat. I first began looking at this murder several years ago and made contact with Kat's parents, Kerry and Glenn. When you talk to them, you can still hear the suffering in their voices when they talk about their daughter and how they have been tortured by not knowing about what happened to her.
She had a lot of passion about different things, and she'd help whoever was the underdog or who was being picked on.
You think of her in a happy way because of the girl she was, but then reality sets in and it's very difficult.
In 2001, Kathryn Grosvenor landed her dream job. She got a position working in childcare at a preschool in Canberra. It was the first time she had really moved out of home and was making a life for herself. When I spoke to the woman who had hired Kat at the preschool, she said that as soon as she met her, she knew she had found someone special. Kat had an extraordinary ability with children and was known as being a gentle soul. She loved dressing up and had a really playful, loving nature. When she went missing, she was wearing oversized Doc Marten-style boots in a blue marble electric blue, and she was wearing a green frog backpack. Both of those items have never been found. But in 2011, there looked like there was a breakthrough in the case when a pair of those very distinctive looking boots turned up in an op shop in Wagga Wagga, a town in New South Wales. However, when police tested the boots, they found that although they looked like the very unique boots Kat was wearing, they weren't the same boots.
When we saw them, we didn't think that they were the boots, to be honest, and yeah, so that was a real letdown.
It was March 2002 when Kat went missing. Her aunt and uncle had gone away for the weekend, and her cousin Joshua, a year younger than Kat, had spent the day playing video games. Kat had spent most of the day in her room. At about 7:30, she had a phone call with her mum, and then she left the house to buy a packet of cigarettes. By all reports, police accepted she made it to the local pub where she purchased the cigarettes. The person working at the counter later said they saw someone of her description. It's just after that, no one knows what happened to Kat and how she ended up being murdered and her body being so brutally attacked. When Kat didn't show up for work on the Monday or the Tuesday, the alarm was raised. It was very unusual for her not to be home or for her to miss a day of work. Her parents immediately started driving from their home up to Canberra and the investigation began.
We knew straight away that there was something wrong because we believed that if she was going to be away for any length of time, she would have told us. So alarm bells straight away sounded for us, and we got onto the Canberra police straight away at that stage and started moving from there.
6 long days passed after Kat went missing until her body was discovered. A local diplomat was canoeing in Canberra's famous Lake Burley Griffin when he saw something in the distance. It was floating in the reeds, and at first he thought it may have been a dead bird. He paddled closer until he got near enough to realise it was a body. Of course, he was completely disturbed and immediately contacted police. It was identified as being Kat. But what really struck the investigating officers was the brutality with which she had been killed.
ACT police have confirmed the body of a woman found in Lake Burley Griffin last weekend had been weighed down with concrete.
60 stab wounds had been inflicted across her chest, neck and body. There were no defensive wounds on her arms, although there was a bruise mark which implied that she may have been restrained before she was killed. And her body had been weighed down with a concrete bollard. It's an incredibly vicious and barbaric way to kill someone, and not the average way you'd expect an opportunistic murder to take place.
It was pretty much as despicable as it gets. She was abducted, murdered, taken and dumped in the lake. As far as brutality goes, it's right up there.
Criminal behaviourist Steve Longford analysed the crime, including the types of injuries that were inflicted on Kat. According to Mr. Longford, the type of person who did this is likely someone who has poor relationships with other people, but a rich fantasy life. Now, that fantasy life might not necessarily be obvious to those around him or her. The other insights he was able to glean was that the nature of this murder meant that it looked like it was sexually motivated. As he said, why else would she be naked? And lastly, that the nature of the injuries was so savage, it implied this was a particularly emotional murder, perhaps perpetrated by someone close to the victim. So who would want to do this to a young preschool worker? A girl who by all respects had lots of friends and no known enemies. During the police investigation, a number of people were identified. In 2004, there was an inquest into Kat's death, in which the coroner heard all the evidence against the known persons of interest. Two of these people were a couple, Kristen Gale and Malcolm Kersley. Kristen described herself as Kat's best friend. The two worked at the childcare centre together and had become friends, socialising outside of work. Kristen was in a relationship with a man called Malcolm, and together they shared a young child. Now, that's when things get interesting, because as police began to investigate, they discovered that Malcolm may have been burning a bit of a torch for Kat. He told friends that he had considered leaving Kristen, that he wished he'd met someone like Kat instead. And police began to pursue a line of inquiry that considered whether Kat had been murdered as part of a love triangle gone wrong. Both Kristen and Malcolm have denied any involvement in Kat's murder. When I contacted Kristen, she was teary on the phone. She said she had been traumatised by what happened to Kat, that Kat was a close friend, and that she had also been traumatised by how much she had been hounded by police. Malcolm did not respond to my request to interview him. At one stage, police thought they had a lead when Malcolm's best friend, a man called Brad, said that he believed Malcolm had told him details about the murder before Kat's body was found. What that implies is that perhaps Malcolm knows more than he should have. Another person of interest was Kat's cousin, Joshua. Joshua came under scrutiny because after a long history of mental health issues, he had been known to be violent. However, Joshua's family all said that they did not believe he had anything to do with Kat's murder. Joshua also declined to be interviewed. He does run a Facebook page and regularly asks for tips and leads into what happened to his cousin. What we do know for sure is that whoever killed Kat is still out there. Kat's family, they rarely hear from police these days. They get the impression that all leads have gone cold. So, if you know any information about what happened to Kathryn Grosvenor, we would love to hear from you, and we'll of course pass it on to police.
We'd just like people to keep coming forward and to help us and help the police.